The story kicks off deep in a dense, unforgiving forest, where a band of hunters is celebrating a successful hunt. These weren't just any hunters. They were professional trappers, making a living by killing wild animals, skinning them for their pelts, and selling the valuable hides back in the city. Just as they were bundling up their haul, ready to head out, their world was turned upside down. A group of tribal warriors emerged from the trees, surrounding them in a flash. The air grew thick with tension. The tribesmen were seething with rage, believing these hunters were responsible for the recent kidnapping of their chief's daughter. Without warning, a hail of arrows rained down on the hunters, and chaos erupted. Men fell left and right. The hunters tried to put up a fight, but they were hopelessly outnumbered. The captain, seeing his men being slaughtered, knew a prolonged fight meant certain death for all of them. He screamed at his men to grab what they could and make a break for the boat. The movie's protagonist, a seasoned frontiersman named Glass, found his son amidst the mayhem and urged him to get to the boat immediately. Just then, another wave of warriors appeared on the horizon, sealing their fate. It was no longer a fight. It was a desperate scramble for survival. They abandoned the remaining pelts and ran for their lives. Many more were cut down, but a small group, including Glass and the captain, managed to reach the safety of their boat and push off into the river's current. Back on the shore, the tribal chief, his heart heavy with his daughter still missing, ordered his men to gather all the abandoned American hides. His plan was to trade them with French hunters for horses and guns, resources he desperately needed to continue the search for his daughter. He vowed they would not stop until she was found. Meanwhile, on the river, the surviving American hunters were still reeling, their nerves shot. Even though they had escaped, they kept their rifles at the ready, knowing the tribe's pursuit would be relentless. They were lost and disoriented, unsure of their next move. The captain turned to Glass, the most experienced tracker among them, and asked for guidance. Glass advised they abandon the boat and travel on foot. He explained that the tribe would surely follow the river, and staying on the water was a death sentence. The land route, while treacherous, was their only hope. However, a man named Fitzgerald vehemently disagreed. He argued that a journey on foot would take weeks, and the harsh wilderness would kill them long before they reached safety. But the captain put his trust in Glass, whose knowledge of the terrain was unmatched. Reluctantly, Fitzgerald complied. A few men, however, refused to listen, believing the river offered a faster escape. They stayed on the boat, while the rest, led by Glass, disembarked. Before they parted ways, the captain ordered them to cache the pelts they managed to save under a pile of rocks, hoping to retrieve them one day. With the hides secured, the small group began their arduous journey on foot, deeper into the vast, unknown forest. Their troubles were far from over. The biting cold of winter was closing in, and they faced weeks of trekking through brutal, freezing conditions. As evening fell on their first day, the daunting reality of their situation set in. They had no choice but to push forward, into the heart of a merciless winter, with danger lurking behind every tree. After a grueling trek, the group decided to make camp for the night under the cold, dark sky. The next morning, the hunters who had criticized Glass's plan to travel on foot found their worst fears realized. The Arikara warriors discovered their camp and, in a swift, brutal attack, killed them all. Back at the scene, one of the tribesmen noticed footprints leading away into the forest. He reported it to the chief, who immediately understood what it meant. His kidnapped daughter must be with the fleeing men. Enraged, he ordered his warriors to follow the tracks and hunt them down. Meanwhile, Glass and his small group, exhausted and starving, pushed on through the dense woods. They set up a temporary camp to rest, but with no food, Glass ventured out alone to hunt. It wasn't long before he heard movement nearby. He raised his rifle, ready for anything, and saw two small bear cubs playing in a clearing. Before he could even think to retreat, a massive grizzly bear burst from the undergrowth, charging at him with incredible speed. The bear slammed into Glass, sending him flying and his rifle skittering out of reach. It mauled him viciously, its claws and teeth tearing deep into his flesh. In agony, Glass went limp, playing dead. The bear, thinking the threat was neutralized, backed away for a moment. Seeing his chance, Glass crawled desperately toward his gun. But as his fingers brushed against the stock, the bear turned and attacked again. He managed to fire a shot, but it only grazed the bear's neck, enraging it further. The grizzly ripped at his throat with its claws and tore into his body again and again. With his last ounce of strength, Glass unsheathed his knife and stabbed the beast repeatedly. The two tumbled down a steep slope, crashing through the trees until they landed in a heap at the bottom. The bear lay dead, its immense weight pinning Glass to the ground. He was barely alive, his throat torn open, his body a canvas of horrific wounds. The sound of the gunshot had reached his companions. They followed the noise and found the gruesome scene. After pulling the massive bear off him, they began the agonizing process of stitching his wounds. It was clear to everyone that Glass wouldn't survive more than a few hours. To make matters worse, the Arikara chief had traded the pelts from the dead hunters with French traders for horses and guns. The pursuit was about to become far more deadly. The men built a makeshift stretcher and carried the gravely injured Glass through the rugged terrain. Their journey came to a halt at the base of a steep, treacherous mountain. It was nearly impossible to climb, let alone carry a man on a stretcher. The captain, seeing no other way, decided a mercy killing was the only option. He pulled a cloth over Glass's face and aimed his pistol. But just as he was about to pull the trigger, Glass's son, Hawk, lunged forward, screaming for him to stop. Moved by the boy's plea, the captain lowered his weapon. He couldn't bring himself to kill the man who had saved them. Instead, he offered a reward. Anyone who stayed with Glass until he died would be paid handsomely. Hawk immediately volunteered. A young man named Bridger also agreed to stay, even without pay. Seeing their youth, the captain insisted a third man stay for protection. The cynical Fitzgerald stepped forward, but only for a price. After some negotiation, he settled on $300, callously remarking that Glass wouldn't last more than a couple of days anyway. And so, the deal was struck. The main party moved on, leaving Fitzgerald, Hawk, and Bridger behind with the dying Hugh Glass, waiting for the inevitable. Fitzgerald, convinced Glass is a dead man walking, grows impatient. He starts digging a grave, not out of respect, but out of a twisted sense of practicality. He believes Glass's lingering life is a danger to them all. As hours pass and Glass stubbornly clings to life, Fitzgerald's frustration boils over. He confronts the helpless man, his voice a venomous whisper, "Why won't you just die? The Arikara are still out there. They'll find us, and we'll all be slaughtered because of you. You can save your son, save us all, by just letting go." He leans in closer, proposing a cruel bargain. Blink, he hisses, blink your eyes, and I'll know you agree. It'll be a mercy. Glass, paralyzed and in agony, fights the natural urge, his eyes wide with defiance. But then Fitzgerald plays his final, wicked card. I guess you don't even want to save your boy. The mention of his son, Hawk, is a blow Glass cannot parry. He blinks. It's the signal Fitzgerald was waiting for. He shoves a cloth into Glass's mouth, beginning to suffocate him. Just as Glass's world starts to fade, Hawk bursts through the trees, gun raised. He shoves Fitzgerald off his father, his young face a mask of fury. I'll kill you, he screams. Fitzgerald, caught red-handed, tries to stammer an excuse, but Hawk's rage is absolute. In a flash of brutal violence, Fitzgerald's knife finds its mark, plunging into Hawk's stomach. Glass can only watch, a silent, guttural sound trapped in his shredded throat. As his son collapses and dies right before his eyes, it's a parent's worst nightmare, played out in horrifying silence. Fitzgerald quickly drags Hawk's body out of sight before Bridger, the other young man, returns. Where's Hawk? Bridger asks, looking around. He's around here somewhere, Fitzgerald lies smoothly. He'll be back soon. Glass, his body a prison of pain, desperately tries to signal the truth, but no sound escapes him. That night, as an oblivious Bridger sleeps, a new, more sinister plan forms in Fitzgerald's mind. The next morning, Fitzgerald shakes Bridger awake with a fabricated emergency. I saw at least 20 Arikara warriors, he lies, his voice filled with false panic. They're coming this way, fast. If they find us, they'll tear us apart. Bridger, terrified, protests. But what about Glass and Hawk? We can't just leave them. Fitzgerald's reply is chillingly cold. If Hawk's alive, he'll find his way back to the fort. Bridger, still clinging to a shred of decency, points out, Glass is still breathing. We promised the captain we'd give him a proper burial. Fitzgerald's patience snaps. He grabs Glass by the legs and brutally drags him across the rough ground, ignoring his muffled screams of agony. He then callously dumps him into the pre-dug grave. What are you doing? Bridger cries out, horrified. He's dying anyway, Fitzgerald snarls, shoveling dirt onto Glass's chest. We're burying him. Promise kept. My job is done. Riddled with guilt, Bridger can only whisper, I'm sorry, Mr. Glass. Leaving a canteen of water by the grave before following Fitzgerald into the wilderness. Glass is left alone, half-buried, broken, and consumed by a pain that transcends the physical, but as the hours crawl by, a primal spark ignites within him. He will not die here. He will not die in a shallow grave dug by his son's murderer. With monumental effort, he claws his way out of the dirt, a man reborn from the earth itself. He drags his shattered body to where he last saw his son. Finding Hawk's cold form, the dam of his grief finally breaks. Silent tears stream down his face, mixing with the dirt and blood. In that moment of absolute loss, a vow is forged in the fire of his rage. Revenge. He will hunt Fitzgerald. He will not stop. He rests his head on his son's chest. The tribal warriors, 12 of them are following us, Gerald says. Bridger looks confused. You said there were 20 before. In that instant, it clicks. Gerald has been lying to him this entire time. A surge of anger rushes through Bridger, and he points his gun at Gerald. But Gerald is unfazed. You should be thanking me, he says calmly. I saved your life. Staying with a half-dead man was going to get us all killed. Glass was going to die anyway. If you want to live, you do exactly as I say. Otherwise, you can go back to him alone. Terrified and cornered, Bridger lowers his weapon and reluctantly follows. Meanwhile, back in the wilderness, Glass is anything but dead. Weak and starving, he drags his broken body across the forest floor. He finds an animal skull and greedily eats the dried flesh still clinging to the bone. He crawls toward a cliff and spots a river below. Water. He painstakingly makes his way to the riverbank and starts to drink. But the water leaks out of the gaping wound in his throat. He realizes he has to seal it. Using the last of his gunpowder, he starts a small fire. He sprinkles the powder directly into his wound, picks up a burning stick, and presses it against his neck. The powder ignites, cauterizing the gash shut. The pain is so immense, so agonizing, that he passes out. For days, he survives on river water and whatever scraps of dead animals he can find. Just as he starts to recover, he spots the tribal warriors. Without a second thought, he dives into the freezing river, letting the current sweep him to safety. The icy water nearly kills him, but he survives. Weeks pass. His wounds begin to heal, and his strength slowly returns. He learns to catch fish with his bare hands, eating them raw. One night, he sees a fire in the distance. He crawls towards it and finds a lone man cooking meat. The man draws his bow, but Glass shows he means no harm. The stranger shares his food, and Glass tells him his story: the bear, the betrayal, the murder of his son. The man is moved. His own family was killed by French trappers. Vengeance is in God's hands, he says, offering to travel with Glass and help him heal. Back at the fort, Gerald and Bridger arrive. No one can know what we did, Gerald warns Bridger. The captain will hang us both. Terrified, Bridger agrees. Gerald spins a tale of bravery, claiming they buried Glass and that his son was taken by natives. The captain pays them their reward. Bridger refuses his share, but Gerald greedily pockets it all. In the wild, Glass and his new friend traveled together, but a fierce blizzard hits. Glass, weakened by fever, collapses. The kind stranger builds a makeshift shelter and tends to him through the night. When Glass wakes up, the man is gone. He steps outside and makes a horrifying discovery: his friend is hanging from a tree, lynched. He sees the French trappers nearby. These are the men who did this. Sneaking closer, he sees one of them assaulting a native girl. It's the chief's daughter. Glass silently kills the attacker, frees the girl, and puts her on a horse. He fires his gun, scattering the trappers' horses, and makes his escape. But as they flee, the tribal warriors spot him. A desperate chase through the snow begins. Glass rides hard until he reaches the edge of a cliff. With nowhere to go, he spurs his horse forward, plunging into the deep ravine below. He survives the fall, cushioned by a snowdrift, but his horse is killed. A blizzard rages, and the temperature plummets. He knows he'll freeze to death. In a final desperate act of survival, he cuts open the horse's carcass, removes its insides, and crawls into the hollowed-out body for warmth. He shivers through the night, but he stays alive. As morning breaks, the storm passes. Glass emerges, exhausted but unbroken. Glass finally makes it back to the American trapper camp. Just as he arrives, a frantic French trapper stumbles in, begging for help. He claims someone attacked their party, killed their captain, and set all their horses free. The man is unknowingly talking about Glass, who had killed the French captain for assaulting the tribal chief's daughter. The Frenchman goes on, explaining that his group scattered. Some froze to death. Others were killed by the natives. As proof, he shows them some belongings, including a water bottle. The man who killed our captain dropped this, he says. Fitzgerald's face goes pale. He recognizes it instantly. That's Glass's bottle, he stammers. I gave it to him myself. The captain, now suspicious, asks the Frenchman where this happened. The man points to a spot about 30 miles away. The captain, Fitzgerald, and a few men immediately ride out. Fitzgerald knows the truth is about to come out. Hours later, they arrive at the location and spread out to search. In the distance, they see a lone figure. As they get closer, they realize it's Glass. The captain is stunned. Fitzgerald had sworn Glass was dead. The captain rushes to Glass and asks what happened. Glass, weak but alive, tells him everything. How Fitzgerald murdered his son and left him for dead in a shallow grave. Furious, the captain gallops back to the camp to arrest Fitzgerald, but it's too late. Fitzgerald has vanished, taking all the money from the company's safe. In his rage, the captain strikes young Bridger and orders his arrest, but Glass steps in. It wasn't his fault, Glass says, defending the boy he didn't know. The captain, still seething, vows to hunt Fitzgerald down for the murder and the theft. Glass insists on going with him. The captain refuses, telling him he needs to rest. But Glass is resolute. I've come this far, he says. I'll be the one to end him. The captain agrees. And the two set off, following Fitzgerald's tracks in the snow. After miles of tracking, they decide to split up to cover more ground. The captain takes one path, Glass the other. It's a fatal mistake. As the captain searches, Fitzgerald ambushes him from behind a rock. The captain declares him under arrest, but as he reaches for his own weapon, Fitzgerald shoots him dead. Hearing the gunshot, Glass races towards the sound and finds the captain's body. Fitzgerald is gone. But Glass is a survivor, and now he's a hunter. He devises a brilliant, grim plan. He props the captain's body up on his horse, using a branch to make him look alive from a distance. Then, Glass lies down on his own horse, playing dead. When Fitzgerald spots the two horses, he assumes the rider is Glass and the body behind is the captain. He takes aim and fires, and the front rider topples from the saddle. Convinced he's finally killed Glass, Fitzgerald cautiously approaches. He flips the body over, and his blood runs cold. It's the captain. Before he can react, Glass rises up and shoots him in the shoulder. Fitzgerald runs, and Glass gives chase, tackling him on the bank of a frozen river. They engage in a brutal, desperate fight. As Glass is about to deliver the final blow, he remembers the words of a kind man who once saved him. Revenge is in God's hands. With those words echoing in his mind, Glass stops. He looks at Fitzgerald, then pushes him into the icy river. The current carries Fitzgerald to the opposite bank, right into the hands of the arriving native tribe. They show him no mercy. The tribe then crosses the river, their faces grim. They surround Glass, but they don't harm him. The chief's daughter, the girl Glass saved, had told her father of his deed. They simply look at him and ride away, leaving him in the silent wilderness. Glass has found his justice, not through vengeance, but by letting go. His long journey is finally over.